Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of Find Your Free, the podcast. I am your hostess, Rachel Voss, and I'm back. Yes, I ended up taking off my first week from recording, and it wasn't something that was planned. Those who have been listening know that I just started this journey at the end of December, right before the end of 2020. And I started with the intention of releasing an episode every week, so recording a podcast every week, which I really enjoy. The space has been really therapeutic for me. David teases me all the time that, like, man, you have the gift of gab. I don't know how you can just sit down there on a mic and go by yourself for like an hour. He has his own podcast, but he has a co-host. So he's like, I can kind of like tap out and, I don't have to be responsible for the whole conversation. He's like, but I don't know how you just get down there and go for an hour. So, outside of if it's like a busy week and making sure I make the time, like it's really not a difficult or challenging space for me. So it feels like a reasonable, intention to be able to, record every week. But last week, we had some family in town. My kid was on his spring break. Dave's nephew was here he's at that ultra fun space, graduating senior, looking at colleges. I'm like, oh my God, I feel like that was just me. But yeah, so he came into town to check out some colleges and just kind of check out the area. And so, we just had our hands full with family and, just being present in that space. And like, I looked up and I'm like, oh shit, like I got to record. And then, I just said, David, what do you think if I take off the week? He's like, dude, it's your podcast, like do what you want. And at first I felt like, there are people who are listening every week, and I came in with this momentum. I don't want to let it down. Dave's like, dude, it's your podcast, like, again, do what you want. And so I listened to the little voice deep down inside that said, take the week off, it's okay, like you'll come back refreshed and revitalized and ready to go. And so I said, all right, I'm going to be on spring break too. So I did not record. I did teach my yoga classes last week. The podcast is probably the only thing I took off from last week. But it was nice to, to choose family and being present and not feel like I had to, sort of force myself into this space, which is a great segue into what I wanted to talk about today. And I knew all last week that I wanted to talk about this. So I was excited to get on and record this morning and get into this topic. I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to go with it. I just know it's something I want to talk about, and that is the experience of burnout, because that is what was happening last week. That is what is happening in my life. And I'm like, all right, I need to talk about this. As a way to acknowledge that I'm feeling the sensations of burnout, and then B, to talk about it and share it, because we all experience burnout, right? And how do we get ourselves in the place to know what that burnout looks like when it's starting? Because burnout is not something that like we just wake up one day and it's like, oh shit, I'm done. I mean, we can feel that way, right? Like we wake up and we have those days where we feel like we've absolutely hit a wall, and that feeling in that moment can feel sudden, but it's probably most likely the buildup of things that have been happening in your body or your life or whatever may have been signaling to you like, hey, slow down a little bit, or pay attention, or just stop and breathe for a moment, because I am running out of steam. And we just, in this society, this very much like go, hustle, get. It's like, we'll overlook the burnout, we'll not pay attention to it. And then, we are waking up one morning just feeling like, a truck hit us or we hit the truck, And so I've noticed that building up in myself last week, and I'm like, all right, I need to give space for this. So, I've talked a lot about how, when the pandemic hit, that I suddenly pivoted, from running around and teaching in different studios and working with different private clients in their home. And so I was like, I had a private client I was working with twice a week in her home. I had two corporate clients I was seeing like weekly and quarterly. I had a studio I was teaching in once or twice a week. And then I had my own space that I was renting 3 or 4 days a week. I think it was more like four, where I held my own group classes and met with private clients and, just had that space, for folks that were like, hey, I don't want you to come to my house, but I need a private space to go. And again, to hold my own private group classes. So I was constantly, I had a part-time job and have a part-time job. I still have that part-time job, but so I was just constantly in the car, driving here, there, and everywhere. And just as the pandemic hit, I was having the realization, like, I cannot keep going like this. Like, it's helping me stay above water or whatever, but like, I can't keep going like this. Like, I've been, and a lot of yoga teachers who have gone the entrepreneurial route, certainly I think this is across the board experience for all of us who first start out as entrepreneurs, and then we quickly realize, like, yeah, that shit's not going to work too much or for too long rather. But I think all of us start off with like stacking up all the clients in the classes because it's like we just got to figure out how to make this work, right? And the more you get into it and the longer you go, like, the more it's like, I am not going back, to life before entrepreneurship. You know what I mean? So it's like, once you're in it, it's like, all right, I got to keep myself in it, right? And next thing you know, you're 5 years in, running around here, there, and everywhere. And it's not that I'm ungrateful for the experience. I so am. But even then, I started realizing like that was burning me out because I'm just one person and I'm dragging my mats and my speakers. And, I always used to say I have like a traveling yoga studio in my car, and so I'd always have all the things that I'd be dragging them around. And, so just as the pandemic hit, like before I realized like, oh, this is a thing. It was like, I would tell David all the time, like, this model can't like keep going like this. Like, I'm going to burn out. And then what? Like, I've got to figure out how to have a sustainable practice if it's going to be just me. Like, if I don't want to have an overhead studio, and if I'm not going to have like a team of people, like if it is truly like Rachel Voss Yoga, the experience, then Rachel Voss Yoga herself, driving all the time and running around, like that's not going to work for Rachel Voss Yoga. And then the pandemic hits, and then it's like, all right, go online, make yourself available for the community. And then it's like, oh shit, this is the model. Like, I don't have to run around. Like, I literally can come from upstairs or downstairs, come into my space, like, and so now I have time for like myself and, to cook dinner for the family, just do all of the things, right? And still be able to be fully present, for my work and my offerings. So I get into that mode, right? And I talked about like how over the course of last year, my dad had a stroke, and David and I have been on the trying to conceive journey. So there's just all this stuff emotionally, personally happening for me behind the scenes. But then at the same time, like I am big time, trying to spiritually, emotionally, what have you, hold space for other people 4 or 5 times a week on a weekly basis. And I'm so blessed, grateful, and fortunate that I had a place to go to when the pandemic hit to be able to offer something. I really feel like in a way that was a saving grace for me, to have myself, to have something to anchor myself into, but even then I have to come back to that because I shared that with my rites of passage, my rites of passage teacher just recently. Today is Monday morning, the Monday after the Earth, Wind, and Fire Isley Brothers versus, it wasn't even a contest or a battle. It was a concert. It was a celebration. And like, I am still riding so high off of that. Like, oh, it was like the perfect way to end what was a really nice day yesterday. So it is the Monday after Easter Sunday. And so happy Easter to all those who celebrate. It is Easter Monday, I think, somewhere in the world. So happy Easter Monday to those who celebrate. And so just the Friday, that just passed, I had a one-on-one session with my rites of passage teacher, and I talked to her about that, about anchoring myself into the community, and she gave me an interesting perspective on that. So we'll come back to that in just a second. But yeah, so I was grateful that with everything that happened last year, that I had a place to anchor myself into, because I think that's what allowed me to keep going. I've been telling students over and over and over, during the course of this past year. And even though it's 2021 and 2021 has its own identity, I sometimes call it 2020 part 2, because it's just like, yeah, this shit's still going on, shit's still dragging. But it's again, to have what I've been telling students is, stay connected to the pulse of life. When you feel anxious, when you feel unrooted, when you feel the impermanence, really, of what is the state of the world today. And really, impermanence is the state of life, right? And that's what yoga and a lot of Eastern philosophy teaches us. Yoga, Buddhism, different practices like that teach us about this idea of impermanence. And it's not usually until we get into our 30s, at least for me, when we realize, like, yeah, nothing, is really permanent. You know what I mean? Like, everything has a season, a cycle. But, humans that we are, and certainly prior to the world slowing down, and we are all running around and doing all the things, we're not really taking that moment to step back and kind of examine our relationship with impermanence and examine our understanding of it, right? Like, we go through life and then we like lose a relationship, we break up with somebody or somebody passes away. And then we have these moments that remind us like, oh shit, you know what I mean? Like, this person's not going to be in my life forever. Or I thought this relationship, was going to go the long haul and it ended, and oh shit. And then we have this moment and, either in that moment we try to control it and fix it and make things work out, for how we want them to work out. Or, if it's the case of somebody passing, like, we have to figure out, okay, how does life now look without this person sort of being physically present, in my life going forward, right? So we have those moments where we sort of run into the idea of impermanence, but really living with it, coexisting with it. And I think it wasn't until 2020 that, society in general, people in general, really sort of faced, you know what I mean, maybe even connected, with this idea of like impermanence. And now, because things just keep constantly shifting, the virus is still prevalent, we're still figuring out vaccines and can we move around, and we're still wearing masks, and there's just still a lot of questions. There's still a lot of like, when are we going to get back to what feels like normal, And so 2020 and 2020 part 2 has shown us that. And I think with the world, coming face to face with impermanence, it's it's a thing. And so for me, it's been a blessing for me to be able to hold space for those who are struggling with that, like who are every day struggling with that. So I remind my community and my students and those who come across my path, like, when you feel like you're really caught in the vortex of this feeling of impermanence, like, find something to connect you with the pulse of life. Like, breathe, go outside, put your feet in the ground, like, feel the sun on your face, listen to the birds chirping. If it's raining, go outside and stand in the rain for a second. Like, even if it's super cold, like, go outside, take a big gulp of air and feel how that coldness actually opens up the lungs, So something that reminds you, like, I'm still here. Life is still happening. Yeah, life may feel weird right now, but I'm still connected, right? So finding some way to stay rooted. And so I have been in the space for a year now. April 6, 2020 was the first yoga class I taught. And so tomorrow makes, when I release this podcast, it'll be April 6, 2021. And so for a year, the better part of a year, I've been just holding space. And I've been realizing over this past week or two, like, okay, what is my experience in all of this? When my dad had the stroke, that definitely threw me for a loop, right? And I was in that space, and when he initially had the stroke, and initially went into the hospital, his life was so in the balance, like they had to wait a couple of days in the hospital after he was admitted before they could do the surgery that was needed to be done in his brain. He had like a brain bleed, and they had to do a surgery to remove the bleeding and the pressure and all that type of stuff. So first it was like a week between when he had the stroke and when he would have that surgery. And then it was like the day of the surgery. And then it was like, okay, what's life going to be like after that? So that moment, I would like that space, I was just freaked. I was crying. My dad is one of my major roots, you know what I mean? And that felt unsteady, in a world, at the time with the pandemic feeling unsteady. And then on top of that, my dad had his stroke the same week that the George Floyd video and the George Floyd murder, happened. And so there was just a lot, you know what I mean? There was just a lot on myself. And that week felt like, oh my God, But my dad pulled through. And, even though it's now managing life after the stroke, he's still here and my root still feels in place. And it has, again, life after stroke has its challenges, but that root is still there. And so I was able to kind of, pull myself together, so to speak, and keep going. So, and then there's, the trying to have the baby journey. And the second episode of this podcast, episode 2, really gets into that. And so I won't take too much time going there, but emotionally, it has taken a toll. It's taken a toll on me. It's taken a toll on David. And just like I hold space for other people, like when it comes to this trying to conceive journey, like David holds space for me, almost at the expense of like, not going into whatever he's feeling like around this, you know what I mean? Like we've been on this journey 3 years now, frankly. And, we're healthy and, all that good stuff. And it's just kind of like, all right, it is what it is. You know what I mean? It just is what it is. And, having to even, that's not so much impermanence as it is, detachment. And with the experience of impermanence comes detachment, right? Like just trying to just be present with everything and not be, being anchored to the breath, right? But not being anchored in like material things or external circumstances for peace of mind, for peace of just life, right? Like not anchoring into that, but, outside of like anchoring into your breath and anchoring into yourself, like, impermanence is the understanding, of like detachment, and then detachment is like its own thing. So it gets really kind of like existential, right? So the baby situation is not so much impermanence as it is stepping back and just really trusting the process, however it's going to play out, right? And so for me, that's my work with that, right? Like just really detaching myself from something that I have pretty much wanted my whole life, And, even quick sidebar with that, like I've just been taking a lot of time to work with guided meditations for myself, just to help slow my mind down, to bring my mind into a much cooler and calm place, in this space of recognizing the burnout that's building up inside of me. I've really, really, really been, practicing what I preach as far as like being the witness to my own experience, And so when I really kind of step back and look at how 2020 has impacted me, again, this baby journey has been more than 2020, but certainly everything that's been happening has compounded, this baby journey. And, it's hard emotionally. It's hard. It's like, you get your cycle every month and it's like, it just feels like a disappointment. It feels like, you almost feel like, is your body turning against you? Like, why is it not doing this thing? And it just seems like it should just be so easy, all of that stuff. And so, I go through this wave of feelings, every month that we don't get pregnant. And then I just kind of like stuff them because I have to keep going, right? Like there was a point where I would like really give in, and the feeling would be really heavy, and it would, and it was just like the whole like house could feel like, okay, Rachel got her cycle, right? But yeah, but now it's like, okay, I feel it and I got to keep going. And again, just in this space of like reflecting on all of this, and doing these guided meditations. One teacher that I've been listening to a lot, who I love, is Tara Brach. And Tara Brach, just if you haven't ever listened to her meditations, like people tell me my voice is something, like her voice, oh my God, it's like asthma, ASMR, right? It's just like, and so she is so good. Tara is so good about in that guided meditation space of like taking you there, right? Taking you into the space of whatever it is that you're housing as a human. So insecurity, fear, anxiety, right? And one talk in particular that I just listened to, she offered this beautiful reminder, like the stuff that we're managing, like it's not my fear, it's not our anxiety, right? It's like the anxiety, it's the fear, it's like the worry, right? Like we are designed, she talks about the mammalian brain, and like the mammalian brain is like designed to go get things. The mammalian brain is designed to feel fear, and you know what I mean? And so it's like when we feel these things in our human existence and then we say, oh, this is like my fear, my anxiety, certainly it can be something that's relative to your personal experience. But when we look at it that way, right, it's like it's ownership, but it's ownership in the way of like, there's something wrong with me because I have this fear. Like, yeah, it's my fear, but like, oh, it's something wrong. Like I'm wrong because I have this anxiety. I'm wrong because I'm scared of, what could happen if I lose my job or if I don't go for, like whatever it is that we deal with as humans, right? And I love that reminder because when we change it from my to the, that space in between is where compassion lies, right? With ourselves and with others, right? So it's like, yeah, I'm having this experience, but I'm not alone in this. Like, you know what I mean? If it's the anxiety, then that means other people are dealing with this and I'm not alone, and sometimes being in that space alone is what feels so heavy. Like when you feel like you're the only one kind of dealing with what you're dealing with, that can be overwhelming on top of whatever it is that you're dealing with. But when you acknowledge that it's the thing, you know what I mean? It can take that weight off. And then when we're dealing with other people, again, when we understand that anxiety is a human thing, it's not like a weakness in a person, you know what I mean? Then we start to have compassion for other people in that way. And so Tara is just really, really good about offering those reminders and taking you to the place of the stuff that you're working through or dealing with and sitting in it, not running away from it, not making it some big monster, but acknowledging that it's there. And then once you acknowledge that, like, how can we say, okay, this thing is there, something I really want or something I really don't want, you know what I mean? Whatever way the experience is going. So for me, like, I really want the baby, right? For somebody else, they may really not want a baby and they're pregnant. You know what I mean? Like it could just be like, whatever it is. And she makes the offer like, okay, there's this thing, but if you step back and look at your life, like, is your life okay just as it is, And it's not spiritual bias passing of not acknowledging and saying, okay, yeah, like life is hard or I have this challenge right now, but it's okay. You know what I mean? No, it's not that. It's just like, okay, what is now, maybe it's not as bad as it feels or I think it's going to be because this thing is or isn't happening, right? So for example, just to take that a little bit further, when I listened to the talk where she took us into fear, and, there's fear of failure and fear of missing out she talked about. And I have both. And I think a lot of us straddle with both, right? Some maybe more than the others. So for me, when it comes to the baby, it's like the fear of missing out, right? And, so I was going into my space of like, oh, I have this fear that I'm not going to be able to have a baby in the space of where I am now in my life. That's what I'm in fear of missing out. But when she took us into the practice of like, looking at our life as it is now instead of like always looking at it through the lens of what we want it to be. When I stepped back, I'm like, I am a mama. I am a mama. And I know that. You know what I mean? It's like all of us as humans, we know the things, right? But sometimes we just need these gentle nudges, these gentle reminders to kind of, bring us back on course. And so when I stepped back, I'm like, I have this fear of missing out, of not conceiving my second child. But if it's about, my lifelong dream of becoming a mom, I'm a mom. It's just that when I go into the little girl energy, right? And that's other work I've been doing too, like really, which is the work that comes up in this rites of passage space, like honoring the little girl, right? Like we once in our lives were little girls, right? Like physically we're little girls, and then we become adults, and it's like as soon as we become adults, like all the ways of the little girl can no longer be, right? But like the little girl is where we started, and thus she's always there. She always has her own dreams, her wants, her desires. And so I'm really trying to step back and get in touch with that little girl, to find and tap into more healing I need to do and just more understanding of self. And I've definitely been in grown up mind so much, especially since graduating college and moving to DC 20 years ago. Like, it's just put your life together, get married, have kids, you know what I mean? And it's like, well, what does the little girl want to do? Like, where did she want to be when I was 25, 30, 35? Like, but here's the thing. The little girl in me always wanted 4 kids. Now, the big girl, when I had that first baby, said, okay, maybe 2 instead of 4, because birthing that baby was like, ooh, 4 more times or 3 more times in that case. I don't know, but I definitely want 1 more. I've always known I wanted multiple kids, right? And the little girl in me has always known that. And so when I step back to look at what hurts me, what's the fear, what's the pain, what's the thing that I'm feeling every time I get my cycle, deeper than just like, oh, I'm not pregnant again. You know what I mean? It's like, but what really hurts, right? Like go into that fear. And, the little girl in me, like I said, always wanted to have multiple kids. The little girl in me also thought I was going to be like some hotshot lawyer by the time I was 40 and have my white, picket fence house and all of that. And that's not my life. I'm actually a law school dropout. I did 6 weeks of law school in 2006 and was like, fuck no, this is not for me. You know what I mean? It's something I always thought I wanted to do. But, even before I started law school, my dad, who was a retired public defender, was like, kid, listen, not that you got to have it all figured out, but you might want to have an idea of what you want to do with this law degree. So like, what are you doing this for again? Oh, because I always wanted to be a lawyer just like you, daddy. You know what I mean? And at that time I was 4 years into working in the housing finance industry and feeling like this is not it. So I'm going to go that law school route and do the thing I always wanted to do, or I thought I wanted to do. And then 6 weeks in, I was like, so not this. So, I'm a law school dropout as opposed to being some hotshot lawyer at the age of 40 with my 4 kids, my house, and, my beautiful husband and my perfect life, right? Like, so I'm reconciling that, like I never thought I was going to quit my corporate life at 37, and pursue yoga work full time. Like being a yoga teacher was like never in my plans. But funny enough, people who've known me my whole life, especially like, moving away and then reconnecting on social media. So people who are reconnecting with me at this point in my life, they're like, oh God, no, yoga teacher is absolutely like, I could see that, either that or like some, human rights advocate or a lawyer, you know what I mean? Like just from folks who knew me from when I was younger, but I never saw that. Right. But I did always want to be a mom of multiple kids. And, in this space of being an entrepreneur, and I really just landed here. And so every day it's like figuring out, all right, well, what does this look like? Because this wasn't part of the plan, right? So I just landed here. And so a lot of times I'm figuring that out and reconciling that and questioning and like, okay, what's the end game? And then I'm really hard on myself because sometimes I feel like I don't have it all figured out. I don't have like, when people will say, well, like, what is the final vision for Rachel Voss Yoga, sometimes I'm like, I really don't know. Like, I know I want to write a book. I know I like this podcast space a lot, and I'd love for this to take off somehow. I love holding space. I know that when the world starts to move around again in a little bit of a more maybe way, like a feasible way where folks feel like really comfortable moving around, like I know I want to hold retreats, but I really don't know. You know what I mean? And sometimes it's just got to be that way. You just got to work with the 5 or 6 steps that have been laid out in front of you and trust that the rest will come, right? But sometimes, again, in this hustle, 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 go, go, go world, you know, in social media where everybody looks like they're on top of shit all the time, you know, you have those moments where you're like, well, am I on top of my shit? Like, you know, and you question yourself. And those questioning myself places are hard for me and emotional and uncomfortable. And it's like, why don't I have this figured out, right? But the one thing I've always known is I want to have multiple kids. That's the one thing. And the one thing I've always known, it ain't happening. So now what, right? And so I manage that place, right? And you know, and then that's when I have to remind myself, well, you always wanted to be a mom and you always wanted it to look a certain way. And maybe it doesn't look like that, right? Like my personal therapist and our couples counselor always put forth the question, like, what does life look like with just one kid? And I'll be honest, like, I don't go there. I've told both my therapist and the couples counselor that, like, I know I got to think about that, but I can't do it right now. And I'm aware that I can't do it, you know, because I just can't, for the same reason that I can't go into the depths of post-stroke with my dad and our conversations being different than they ever were. And my dad's and my conversations were like the heartbeat of our relationship. You know, it's like wit for wit. You know what I mean? Like, you know, and that's not the same. And I don't go into how heavy that feels because I'm like, I can't, you know, like I got to keep going. And I figure as long as I'm aware of that, that's okay. You know what I mean? Like when you're not aware of the shit that you're stuffing, that's when you're a ticking time bomb. You know what I mean? But as long as you're like, okay, I know I'm putting that up on the shelf for now, but at some point I'm going to have to feel that. You know what I mean? So that same feeling, thinking is why I won't go into what does life look like with one child, because it does create this fear. It does make me feel like I'm losing hope. And I totally was like, I'm not going to get on a tangent with this. And here I am. And this is what David talks about. Like, you start off one way, you go on this tangent for like 20 minutes, and you come back and you're still able to bring it home. Because this is about burnout, right? But let me wind it up so we can get back on track. So I'm just saying all this to say that, you know what I mean? Like, reconciling that I am a mom and being grateful for that, because for as much as I want number 2, I know there are women who are trying to get number 1, you know? And I have to remind myself of that. And then here's another thing, right? Like reminding yourself of that in a way to stay connected with the pulse of life, right? But not reminding yourself of that to the point that you're pushing down what your feelings and your experience. You know, don't spiritually bypass yourself by saying, okay, you know, this baby thing or whatever it is, this thing, it's deep in my heart. It's something I really want. It's not panning out. I'm trying so hard. It doesn't feel like no, but I'm not getting a strong yes, right? So what do? And somebody else who's on a similar path, you know what I mean? Like they're working for the same thing or whatever the case may be. And maybe you have one step ahead of this other person, you know what I mean, who's like on the same track. So again, in my case, like I have one kid versus the mom who doesn't have her kid yet, you know, and really wants one, you know what I mean? So it's like, I'm not going to bypass the fact of what I'm managing emotionally, because again, when you bypass yourself, that's when you create yourself to be a ticking time bomb. You know, you create yourself to be a ticking. I feel like I said that wrong, but you create you make yourself be a ticking time bomb, right? But then so that we don't get sunken, in the depths of like what we're feeling. It's like, okay, but I have this one. You know what I mean? I have this one. And so I've been having, coming back to that Tara Brach work, it's like my life is what I've wanted it to be by way of I've always wanted to be a mom. Okay, I'm a mom. My life is not, I wanted Voss to have siblings, like younger siblings, and it's not that yet. You know what I mean? And so I was saying all that to say, just trying to manage all of that emotionally behind the scenes. Like I've been realizing lately, like how much that really has eaten at me. And I thought I recognized that a couple months ago, but I'm realizing that now. And so bringing it back to this idea or this conversation about burnout, I've been thinking about like how I've been just holding so much space for a year. And like, yeah, I've gotten paid for my classes and I've gotten people who've made donations, and I'm so grateful for every donation, for every student who has paid for one class, 10 classes, monthly classes, but I've offered a lot of stuff for free. I'm here. I got meditations, I got classes, I got space, I got time, I got emails. I've just been offering. And again, I've been using that as my place to anchor myself into to keep going, right? But when I come back to that conversation I said I had with my rites of passage teacher just this past Friday, 3 days ago, I told her that and she's like, okay, let's pause and think about that for a moment, right? Like, it's beautiful that you have this community and it's beautiful that you love your community the way that you do, right? But you're anchoring yourself into taking care of other people. Like, that can't be the only place you anchor yourself into, because you're giving of yourself in that place. Like, where's the place where you're giving back, where you're investing, where you're nourishing, where you're feeding? Like, if you're only anchoring yourself in that place, you're not feeding yourself. You got to anchor yourself in a place where you're feeding yourself, and everything else comes from that. So I think it's the same teacher. I talked about this a couple of episodes ago about no longer like just having like a full cup and giving people from that full cup, such that when the cup is full and you give to people from that, it becomes empty or halfway full, right? And it's like, okay, you got to keep filling your cup up. And she's like, no. That's not even good enough anymore. Like, good enough is always having the full cup and feeding people from your overflow. And so this anchoring is like the same way. Like, anchor yourself in a place where you're always feeding yourself, so that when you've got to give a little bit of what you're giving yourself to other people, you still got a full tank that you're working from, right? You know what I mean? And when, you're being there for other people and their fluctuations are kind of taking you places because you got to hold that space for them, like, you're still grounded. So if you're only anchoring yourself and taking care of other people, hell yeah, you're going to burn yourself out. So that's the realization I've been having, like, I'm tired all the time. And it's heartbreaking for me when I say, which I did one day last week, like, I'm tired. I'm in the kitchen putting the trash together, whatever I'm doing. Voss is there like, Ma, you're always tired. And when your kid says something like that to you, it's like, shit, then what's the narrative am I going around saying all the time, right? Like, and here's the deal, like, in Ayurveda speak, I have a very, very, very Vata mind. Vata is the dosha that's associated with air and movement and creativity. And in its highest form, you are full of ideas and imagination and just on all cylinders, as far as like creative expression goes and, intellectual stuff, like all of that, like you're on it, right? In its, I won't say in its lowest form, but when it's not vibrating, high, when Vata is not at a high vibration, when it's at a lower vibration, it shows up as like anxiety, insecurity, feeling unsteady, insomnia. And I am a Vata sleeper. Like, my mind, like many of us, moves a lot when I sleep. It moves all the time. And then it's just a freaking symphony of noise when I lay down for bed. But Vata's Although I'm slightly more pitta than vata, but vata types tend to sleep light, because again, it's just it's hard for vatas. When I say this to get deep, I don't mean like intellectually, you know what I mean? But because they're air, it's like they're always kind of floating, right? So not deep, but grounded. That's what I want to say, rooted, right? So in such a way that when you sleep, right? Sleep is being grounded. Sleep is being rooted. Sleep is being sedentary, right? Sleep is stillness. And vata moves, 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 moves. So those who have high vata or primary vata or vata imbalance may also notice the experience of being a light sleeper because of that constant movement and the challenge with being able to anchor and ground down, right? And so I struggle with that. So I've always been a light sleeper. So any noise I hear, like if I'm not in a deep sleep, if I'm not in that place of sleep and I hear a noise, like I'll be up, I'll tune into a noise. Like if David breathes like just a little bit loud, like I'm hooking into his breath and I'm like, oh my God, I can't sleep. I'm hearing every single noise. So there's that, right? And I'm tired from that. Like I try all of the things. Like there's a lot more I can do. I can definitely be better about, shutting down electronics 2 hours before I go to sleep and stuff like that. Like there are things I can do that I'm still trying to incorporate to become a better sleeper. But I've tried things and still it's a struggle for me to sleep, right? But then I'm also tired from all that I'm doing and managing and trying to figure out and trying to stay one step ahead of that, right? Like that is just wearing on me. You know what I mean? It's just, I just feel run down, and so there's that tired. And when Voss said to me, Mom, you're always tired, I had to have a moment with that. Like, I'm tired of being a light sleeper. I would love to know what it feels like to get 8 hours of deep, solid rest. And I am starting to feel really burnt out. And last week I put in my Instagram stories, like I'm tired of being tired. And that means it's time for change. So yeah, again, what are other things that I can continue to do to improve my sleep experience? But what can I do for myself? And when I step back, man, I teach yoga all the time and I have my moments where I have my practice for myself, but really the space where I move the most is when I'm moving, when I'm teaching. The space where I meditate the most is when I'm guiding others through meditation and I'm taking a moment of silence there. You know what I mean? Like, I work hard to try to cook as healthy and, what I mean, as best as I can for my family. But sometimes like when it comes down to sitting down and taking care of me, it's like, whatever. You know what I mean? And I realized like my body hasn't been moving the same when I teach. Like I used to feel really, really fluid when I taught, and I feel clunky in my body. And my mind just more and more is just noise, 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 and constantly thinking, and what am I doing? And I got to fix my website and I got to market on the Instagram and I got to do more of this and I got to do more of that. And oh shit, I didn't record my podcast this week and fuck, I got to do my newsletter and shit, I got to get Voss, I got to make sure I do his temperature before he goes to school and we got to drive him, we got to pick him up and there's all of that. And I'm just like, what the hell am I doing for myself? And so I had to really have a conversation with myself and I'm like, I need to exercise more. I need to drink more water. I need to meditate more. And I need to eat a little bit better. You know what I mean? Like just, not that I'm eating trash. It's just that I'm either not eating enough or like I'm eating like popcorn for dinner sometimes. You know what I mean? Like it's like stuff like that. And it's just like, cause I'm just tired all the time. So when it comes to me, I'm just like, whatever, And so when I had, my rites of passage, my monthly call on Friday, and we talked about, not only anchoring myself in the space of being there for other people, like we've been meeting, I guess this is our 4th month now as far as one-on-ones. And she always comes back to like, what are you doing for you? What's joy for you? What's fun for you? And every time I think I have an answer, it's like, it kind of gets broken down like, honey child, like, we got to nurture that little girl. We got to nurture that mind space. Like, you know what I mean? Like you can't always be on the edge of burnout, And she said to me like, when does all of this stop, Rachel? Like, how long are you going to keep just going like this, you know? And as she's talking to me and she's telling me like, you're worthy and you're a queen, and, you know, just kind of be in the mirror for me, right? That I won't be for myself. Like, as she's saying like all these beautiful affirmations, and when are you going to, you know, just make room for you, who you are, your voice, your way, your everything, right? I heard all the things I tell myself. You're not a good mom. You could do better. You're not the best yoga teacher. You don't do handstands. You're not a complete vegan. You know, like every day. Yes, your favorite yoga teacher can sometimes be her own worst enemy. And I'm sharing this because we all can be. Even the most enlightened. You know, I mean, I'm thinking of the Marianne Williamses, maybe even Tara Brach has a moment where she was like, fuck, I don't like the way that meditation went, right? Like, we're all human. We may just have or be more equipped or have practiced being more equipped with dealing with these things longer than others, right? But we all are always just one step ahead of like being our own worst enemy. And I just started crying when I heard, when she's saying to me what she's saying to me, and I heard myself what I'm saying to myself. So when she said to me, when does it stop? That's what I said to her. When does it stop? When do I stop telling myself I'm not enough? When do I stop being hard on myself, right? I have this fear of like, is this work going to sustain me for the rest of my life? You know what I mean? And like, I don't see the thing right now that's going to sustain me for the rest of my life. Like, yeah, I'm in a good space now. I'm going to keep going. I've got momentum and community and all that stuff. But can this last me until I'm 60, 70? Can this sustain me to put Voss through college, right? Like all of these things, right? And it's just like, yeah, when does it stop? And it's just like, Rachel, just be, you know? And she's like, I challenge you to have a day of nothing. And I'm like, so when I was talking to her about that, like my fear of like, oh, how is my business going to make it? You know what I mean? Like, she's like, all right, well, what can you do to make sure you're making it? I'm like, oh, I got to market more. I'm not marketing myself enough. And shout out to my beautiful mentee and yoga student, Mary. I also officiated her wedding. When was that, Mary? 2017, I think. Yeah, 2017. I officiated Mary's wedding, and which was a beautiful experience. Yes, I officiate weddings too, or I have. But I've been working with Mary one-on-one, and I did an Instagram post recently about just how I'm not a super big social media marketing person, right? And Mary's like, you got to do a podcast on this. And I do, right? So there will be an episode coming on that, right? Like entrepreneur, right? Entrepreneurs and social media marketing, right? But then I'm listening to this podcast last week, and it's like, yeah, like if you're an entrepreneur and you're not marketing yourself, like what the fuck are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, it's not like back in the day where it's just like your talent gets found, you get put in front of a person and they fix you all up and they market you. It's like we all have Instagram at our fingertips. You know what I mean? We all have Facebook, whatever social media platform that you're using. So like, no excuses why you're not marketing. And then I'm like, yeah, I'm a lame. Like, I'm not marketing myself enough, right? But that's because that marketing thing is in battle with like, I just want to post and I feel like posting. Like, I'm not hooked into social media like that, right? But then it's like, but if you're not using it, what the fuck are you doing, right? So it's like, so when my teacher asked me like, all right, so how are you going to address this fear of the sustainability of your business? I'm like, I'm going to market more. I'm going to da-da-da-da. She's like, there you go again. Like, it's all about doing. And it's not to say like there isn't work that needs to be done. Yeah, obviously you got to have systems, tools, and processes in place to have a viable, successful business. Absolutely. But we've got to get you back to square one, Rachel. And she's always telling me that, like, we got to get you back to square one, which is your mind, which is nurturing that little girl, which is making sure you're good. You know what I mean? Like, you're absolutely good, and that you're okay with being good and being who you are. Like, you came into this world as all that you need, beautiful, perfect. You know what I mean? Like, worthy. And you're still here. And the fact that you're here is your worthiness, right? So like, it's not the marketing you got to do. Like, yeah, you got to do it, but like, you got to take care of you. Because like, if you don't take care of you, like, that's going to show up. And again, this is something I teach, right? But like, every teacher, how do I want to say this? Like, I always say in yoga, like, the best teacher is always a student, right? And so the best spiritual guide is always a student. Like, we should always be working and healing ourselves. Like, yeah, maybe we've made some strides and got some understanding and overstanding, right? Like, a little bit more than maybe the person who's coming to us to look for something, right? So like, I've done 10 years of therapy. I've been through divorce. I got some years in life like under my belt, right? So yeah, I have an experience to teach from and to share from, you know what I mean? Like, I have value to offer, but I still have my own work too. And so she's like, Rachel, step one's got to be you. And then everything will come from there. And she's like, and we talk about this every month, but you know, I have to ask you now, like, when is this going to stop? Like, when is you just being you enough and going from there? And that's why I challenge you to do nothing. And so I'm like, nothing like Netflix binge nothing? She's like, whatever nothing is. And she's like, you know, and I challenge you, like, you know, you're trying to find like who you really are, you know, just all these things. And she's like, and it's like, I think you're making it bigger than it is. And I know I am. I just don't know how to unmake it bigger. You know what I mean? So when she says do nothing, I'm like, all right, well, what is nothing? Like, I have to make nothing, like I have to figure it out. Like, it has to be a thing that I have to figure out, right? Like, that's always my mind. Like, it has to be something that like I can see, touch, understand. Like, it has to be the way that I understand it, right? So Easter Sunday, you know, just frankly speaking, you know, David and I are not in the place where we're going to church. Like, we don't identify as Christians, you know what I mean? We honor Christian principles, we have Christian families, you know, but we don't identify and move like as traditional Christians would move. So on Easter, you know, we didn't get up and go to church. We got up, we meditated, we said happy Easter to each other. You know what I mean? We had our own church by way of just sitting outside. And, you know, so we had our moment, right? And so I said, okay, David, today's going to be my day of nothing. And he's like, all right, I support it. What does your day of nothing look like? I don't know, but it's going to be a day of nothing. I was like, I know I got to call my mom, and I know I got to put that pile of laundry away that's been sitting there for like a week. Other than that, I don't know. I'm going to finish listening to this one podcast. I don't know. So I did. I called my mom, folded the laundry, listened to the podcast. And then about 12 o'clock, I was like, hey, babe, you want to walk to Starbucks? He's like, sure, let's walk to Starbucks. So we walked to Starbucks, we got a drink, we came back, and it was just this gorgeous day. And then we started like sitting. I was like, babe, can we just sit outside with our drinks for a little bit before we go back inside? Sure. So we're sitting on the steps and we're just conversing about life and, you know, just how we do. And, you know, we're on the steps for about an hour. And then I'm like, hey, babe, let's go sit. Well, he actually said, he's like, babe, let's go sit in the back. I'm like, all right, let's go. We'll get some little snacks. So we have our little table out there. And, you know, I put together like some plant-based cheese. Whole Foods, side note, best plant-based cheese. If you are on the plant-based journey or trying to do more plant-based stuff, the plant-based cheese journey is a journey in and of itself. There's some cheese that's like, oh my God, this is like fucking cardboard. And then there's some cheese that absolutely works. Whole Foods plant-based cheese works. So, you know, I had some plant-based cheese slices. We had late July crackers, also really good crackers. Chips, salsa, strawberries, bought out the Tito's, some vodka. You know, I just set up like a little picnic on the deck. And we put on our music, and we must have sat out there for 3 hours, maybe, at least. And, you know, the kid came down a couple of times, like, what are you guys doing out here? And, you know, kicked it with us a little bit, then went back up. And I was like, babe, like, this is nothing. And this is really beautiful. Like, this was not planned. And the only plan we had that day, again, was the Earth, Wind, and Fire Isley Brothers event on Instagram last night. Like, that was all we had planned. We knew whatever yesterday took us, all roads were leading to us watching that Instagram concert last night. So we had this beautiful day of nothing. We talked about a lot of things. We talked about these spaces that we're in. We talked about our baby. You know, we just were. And then we enjoyed the concert, and we were up, you know, that concert I think was until like 12. And we just had a great time. And then we went to bed. And now I'm awake and I'm doing this podcast. And I had my day of nothing and I feel good. So getting on this hour, right? Like, again, I wasn't sure where this was going to take us, but, I did want to just get into that idea of burnout and taking time for yourself to notice if you're experiencing it, if you're noticing like inklings of it, and if you're noticing inklings of it, like pause and get ahead of that shit now. I haven't, I was going to say I haven't had my hit the wall moments, but excuse me, I randomly have hit the wall moments, right? But I'm trying to stop myself from getting to the place where I hit the wall so much that like I can't show up for my community. I can't show up for my kid. I can't show up for my partner. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there are people in this world who now depend on me. And it's hard for me to say that as a healer because I feel like that's egotistical, but it's also the truth. There are people that are like, I look forward to this yoga space. I look forward to those meditations. Like, they get me through my day. They help me with my anxiety. Like, even just the fact of practicing with this community, like I'm in this town all by myself. I feel a little less alone now. Like, I feel like, I have these people I practice with all the time. And so there are people who look forward to those spaces and depend on that. And they look forward to the spaces that I hold, right? And so when I'm hearing myself say, like, I'm tired of being tired, I feel this tiredness in me. I feel this emotional burnout of like, just trying to fight for my baby, my second baby, right? Like, I see all these things, I feel all these things, and I'm like, okay. And then I hear my teacher say to me, when does it stop? And so somehow, some way, I've got to put things down and just start from step one. And so I talked to David about it and I said, babe, today was a great day of doing nothing, or yesterday, but I was like, I think doing nothing is like, yeah, I got to do the marketing. Yeah, I got to do the things. But right now, I think doing nothing is like doing nothing but taking care of me. And so I've recommitted. I signed up for my own, fitness practice. There's an online teacher that I found, and she does a beautiful combination of like strength training and Pilates and yoga. And, she's more fitness than I am with yoga. Like yoga, I'm more like inside out, and we use some physical work to get us there, but she's like straight like fitness, nutrition, wellness that way, stuff like that. Not totally in the body, but that's just more her thing. I don't think anybody looks at me and thinks fitness. I think people look at me and think squishy, soft, restorative, which is what I want it to be. But anyway, so I found, because I'm particular about the teachers that I work with. And so I love what she offers. She's like, it doesn't have to be like an hour of like balls to the wall, like just do 20 minutes every day. Like, she teaches the way I teach, but for me, I need that invitational work in terms of like the physical stuff and just staying with like strength training and stuff every day. I'd be in child's pose every day if you let me. And there's nothing wrong with that. But, I do need some cardio work and stuff too. So I'm committed to doing a little something every day. If it's just 15 minutes, certainly maybe 45 minutes to an hour, 3 or 4 times a week. And this is along with me teaching, my classes and stuff like that. But committing to my own fitness regimen, I am committed to improving some areas of how I nourish my body by way of food and drink. I'm committing to more of my own meditation practice every day, like just the things to help keep Rachel going. You know what I mean? To tend to the little girl, to tend to the woman I am now, and, the dreams I still have that I can still manifest, and to mourn the dreams I had as a little girl that, are not going to come to pass. And the kid that I want to have, right, sometimes feels like she's in that balance, right? Dreams that I still want to manifest, and like dreams that like, okay, I think the ship for that has sailed, right? My little girl, I feel like, is in the middle of that. Like, I don't want to think the ship has sailed. And it hasn't. It hasn't. Nobody has told us, like, no, you cannot. We've been told, like, all right, it's going to be a battle, age and whatever. But, like, but it's not a no, So she and, I say she because I want to manifest a little girl. Like, it's like I want to give birth to the little girl I'm trying to heal. And I think I started saying this earlier, but I never picked up on it all the way. My from the heart is that, you know, when Voss was born, my son, he was born of so much love. And I tell him that all the time. Your mama really wanted you. And I'm so very glad you're here. He was born of my first marriage. And my first marriage was a very dark and painful place in my life. And even though I've been divorced 12 years now, there's still wounds and trauma from that I still manage and am healing from, and frankly need to not let go of, you know what I mean? But let go of, not let go of like in a trite, like, oh, just let it go. You know what I mean? Like, no, it was my experience, but I still sometimes hold on to like, this was done to me and it's not fair. And how could he, you know? And it's like, it happened, you know what I mean? Like it happened and it wasn't cool, but you know, just, you got to let it go. And so I always felt like the joy that I wanted to experience of having my first kid was stolen from me. Like I had the joy of birthing a kid, but the joy of the relationship, you know, from whence the kid came, I felt like that was stolen from me, right? Because as a little girl, right, I always had the image of like how it would look like being married and having babies, and my husband was just going to treat me like a queen and I was going to get this push present, you know, like, so some of it, yeah, was totally like expectation. And I continue to learn that at 43, like, when do we put down, which is another thing my rites of passage teacher said to me, like, when do we put down like what it has to look like, and when are we just one with what is, you know? And so that's still my work. But yeah. And so, you know, for a long time, my desire to have a baby was just because like I wanted it to come from a place that didn't feel like the joy was taken from me. You know, I wanted the baby to come from a place where I knew like there was love and it was safe and all of that. And I remember one time a healer said to me, you gotta detach the two. Like your baby has to come from this space. It can't come from that space, like trying to make up for an experience you had or you didn't have. Like your baby can't come from that, right? So there's that, and understanding that. And so having to put that down. And then there's just also, when I had Voss, I wasn't as holistic as I am now. And so now it's like, oh, I want the water birth and I want to be the yoga teacher mom. And you know what I mean? Like, I want to just experience like having a baby in this space, right? And then I just want more children. Then I want a kid with David, you know? So yeah, there is a lot of like how I want it to look like around that, you know what I mean? And so all of that, I want another baby because I've wanted multiple kids, but in terms of breaking things down and from the heart and where the work is, like that's a lot of the energy behind that. And so I'm trying to figure out how to put all of that down and just be present with life as it is. Be present with being a mom, because I am a mom. Be present with, we're still in the game to have a baby. It might just not be yet, you know, like, you know, spiritual readers have told me like, she's coming, but you still got work to do. You know what I mean? Like David and I talked about that yesterday. We're in the process of getting ready to move, which is another layer of, you know, stuff we have to manage. And it's like, maybe it just wasn't this place. Maybe it's, you know, so, but just being present, taking care of myself and doing nothing, you know? And so, and seeing the work and the creativity that comes from that place. So my loves, like, again, if you are experiencing burnout, if you are identifying it, if you're hearing narratives or mantras like, I'm always tired, it's not enough, like, pause and really allow yourself to hear that. Take a moment and check in, breathe, pull up a Tara Brach meditation, come to class, reach out to me, like, but get ahead of it before it takes you down. You know, because burnout is so real. And when it shows up, it can be a very powerful thing. And if you're in it, then notice it, acknowledge it, you know what I mean? And put down anything that is contributing to it. If it's not nourishing you, if it's not for your highest good, if it's something that like it is something you have to tend to, but maybe you can just put it down for a moment just to make sure you're good, then I invite you to do that, to pause and breathe and make sure you're okay. We're still in, again, 2020 part 2. We still have just work to do as far as like society shifting and the way of the world shifting and, moving from like this patriarchal culture to more feminine energy. Like there's just, as a healer, I see it and I sense it. There's just work that needs to be done. And anybody who listens to this podcast is about that work. I know that whatever it is that you're doing, you're about that work. You're about that life. And you've got to take care of yourself to be able to show up for the work and to show up for life. So I'm going to put a pin in this conversation for now, but I definitely see this as a topic that I will be revisiting in the future. So just pause and find your nothing, find your nothing. Give yourself permission for nothing, because I promise you it will become something. I know the few things that are ahead of me that I have to tackle. I don't know what life's going to look like a year from now, 5 years from now. You know what I mean? Like, I know I want a house on a beach. I know I want a lemon tree. I know I want a house with a porch. I know I want my own garden. I know I want my own land. But this business stuff has proven to me time and time and time again, this path of purpose and entrepreneurship and being a spiritual guide, it's really going to reveal itself to me a few steps at a time. And the type of person I am, it's like, I want to know the end game first. And that's always been like, my dad will tell you that since I'm a kid. It's like, I got to know the end game first and then I'll be good. And it's like, no, you got to trust the process. And that's a word with the baby too. I got to trust the process. So, you know what I mean? Like, I know there's a book in me. I don't know when it's going to come. I love this podcast. I don't know if NPR is going to pick it up. You know what I mean? But I know I'm called to do these things. And so I'm just going to keep showing up and keep taking care of myself so that I can keep showing up. So with that, lovelies, let's go ahead and begin to close out this podcast. And speaking of Tara Brach, in a guided meditation I was listening to over the weekend, she shared a poem that I'm like, oh, I love this poem. And I've already shared it with my yoga class. And I knew that I would want to share this poem today. There is some landscaping that just suddenly started behind our house. I don't know if that noise is translating through the mic. If it is, please bear with that. And if not, then don't worry about what I'm talking about right now, because I never know what David's able to edit out. You know what I mean? I just get on here and talk. But yeah, this poem was so beautiful, and it really spoke to just the place that I'm in now. So wherever you are, just take a moment to notice that you're sitting comfortably. And if you're lying on your back, maybe have your knees bent, the arms out to the side. If you're sitting in a couch or a chair, maybe just letting your feet come to the floor, resting your hands on your thighs. Just feeling yourself ground down. Soften your shoulders and maybe close the eyes if that feels good, or find a soft gaze if you prefer. And right here, right now, take a deep breath in. Exhale out. Finding that again. Taking a deep breath in. Exhale, full breath out through the mouth. Even noticing if that breath created just a small shift, a small softening, a little bit of ease. And this poem is called The Cure for It All by Julia Fehrenbacher. Go gently today. Don't hurry or think about the next thing. Walk with the quiet trees. Can you believe how brave they are? How kind? Model your life after theirs. Blow kisses at yourself in the mirror, especially when you think you've messed up. Forgive yourself for not meeting your unreasonable expectations. You are human, not God. Don't be so arrogant. Praise fresh air, clean water, good dogs. Spend something from joy. Open a window, even if it's cold outside. Sit. Close your eyes. Breathe. Allow the river of it all to pulse through eyelashes, fingertips, bare toes. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe until you feel your bigness, until the sun rises in your veins. Breathe until you stop needing anything to be different. I love that. Breathe until you stop needing anything to be different. And that ties back to what Tara Brach teaches, to just be present with what is, to not need things to be different, even if it's just for a moment. So keep breathing until you need things to stop being different. So with that, loves, I hope that this episode, I hope every episode is of support, provides some sort of gem, some sort of understanding. I'm here teaching, offering meditations. If you want to work with me one-on-one, if you want to join the community, please find me Instagram, Rachel Voss Yoga, website, rachelvossyoga.com. I am here and I am working on preventing burnout so I can continue to be here. So my loves, with that, may you be happy. May you be free. May you be peaceful, easeful, useful, and joyful. The light in me honors the light in each of you. Thank you for joining, and I'll see you next week.